Hello and welcome to the news today on a day when the Prime Minister has addressed the nation on the challenge facing us, the emergency of COVID 2.0. This is the news today. Let's tell you what the Prime Minister of the country said today. Listen in.
साथियों, इस बार जैसे ही कोरोना के केस बढ़े, देश के फार्मा सेक्टर ने दवाइयों का उत्पादन और बढ़ा दिया है। आज जनवरी फरवरी की तुलना में देश में कई गुना ज्यादा दवाइयों का प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है। इसे अभी और तेज किया जा रहा है। कल भी मेरी देश की फार्मा इंडस्ट्री के बड़े जो प्रमुख लोग हैं, उसके जो एक्सपर्ट लोग हैं, उनसे बहुत लंबी चर्चा हुई है। प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाने के लिए हर तरीके से दवाई कंपनियां की मदद ली जा रही है। हम सौभाग्यशाली हैं कि हमारे देश के पास इतना बड़ा मजबूत फार्मा सेक्टर है। कुछ शहरों में ज्यादा डिमांड को देखते हुए विशेष और विशाल कोविड हॉस्पिटल बनाए जा रहे हैं। साथियों, पिछले वर्ष जब देश ने कोरोना के कुछ ही मरीज सामने आए थे, उसी समय भारत में कोरोना वायरस के खिलाफ प्रभावी वैक्सीन के लिए काम शुरू कर दिया था। हमारे वैज्ञानिकों ने दिन रात एक करके बहुत कम समय में देशवासियों के लिए वैक्सीन विकसित की है। आज दुनिया की सबसे सस्ती वैक्सीन भारत में है। भारत की कोल्ड चेन व्यवस्था के अनुकूल वैक्सीन हमारे पास है। इस प्रयास में हमारे प्राइवेट सेक्टर ने इनोवेशन और एंटरप्राइज की भावना का बेहतरीन प्रदर्शन किया है। वैक्सीन्स की अप्रूवल्स और रेगुलेटरी प्रोसेसेस को फास्ट ट्रैक पर रखने के साथ ही सभी साइंटिफिक और रेगुलेटरी मदद को बढ़ाया गया है। यह एक टीम एफर्ट है, जिसके कारण हमारा भारत 2 मेड इन इंडिया वैक्सीन के साथ दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा टीकाकरण अभियान शुरू कर पाया। टीकाकरण के पहले चरण से ही गति के साथ ही इस बात पर जोर दिया गया कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्षेत्रों तक, जरूरतमंद लोगों तक वैक्सीन पहुंचे। दुनिया में सबसे तेजी से भारत में पहले 10 करोड़, फिर 11 करोड़ और अब 12 करोड़ वैक्सीन डोज दिए गए हैं।
So the big question now is the center really in control of COVID 2.0 as the Prime Minister seemed to suggest, or is the government behind the curve? I'm joined today by two very special guests who've been at the heart of India's COVID fight. Dr. Randeep Guleria is member of the National COVID Task Force, apart from being the director of AIIMS and one of India's leading doctors. And Dr. V.K. Paul is the person who's really at the heart as the chairperson of this National Task Force. And he is, of course, a member of the Niti Aayog. Appreciate both of you joining us on a day when the Prime Minister has spoken out. I want to ask that question to both of you. You, Dr. Paul, first. Is the government fully on top of the situation, or are you behind the 8 ball? The fact that there is a shortage of oxygen supply acknowledged by the Prime Minister, the fact that possibly the vaccination drive hasn't picked up to the speed that you would have anticipated a few months ago, all of this, does it suggest with the cases mounting, are we behind the curve, or are we really in control of COVID 2.0?
I think, as the Prime Minister highlighted, the pathway to control this pandemic with the help of people, with the help of state governments, we have a way forward to work together to face this challenge. This challenge has come, as he said, तूफान की तरह है, लेकिन इसको फेस करना है। और उन्होंने आउटलाइन किया है that this time around we have the tools more than what we had in the past, and we are in a position to ramp up these tools across the country in a significant way. Yes, there are challenges, indeed there are challenges, but the speed with which the response is being mounted on all the fronts, and he outlined specific tasks and specific steps that are being taken for meeting the oxygen shortages, the medicine ramp up, as well as the vaccine, ramping up. So I think we will face it all together. People of India will face this challenge effectively and win this war. We must come together on this day and
Can I-
listen to the two crucial things.
Right.
And that one truly is that we must make sure that we do not add to the chain of transmission of the virus by staying inside, by behavior modification, by right behavior to protect ourselves with mask and social distancing and so on. So these are the areas that are to be delivered by the people of India. The system is all together with state governments. We will win this war.
Sir, before I come to Dr. Guleria, I just want to press you though, Dr. Paul, on one thing. Have you been caught napping? I want an honest answer. Has the government been caught napping by COVID 2.0? Because elections were being held, there was the Kumbh. Today the Prime Minister is talking of COVID appropriate behavior. But in the last few months, there seemed to be a sense that we had conquered COVID. Has the government been caught napping? Were you and others in the COVID task force caught napping by just the virulence with which this second COVID wave has come? So I want an honest answer.
Rajiv, the second waves the world over, we knew come with a steeper peak, and they come in a big wave, so to say, and the peaks are typically higher than the first peak. This is known to us. The science of this is known to us, and of course, the current wave is also being coming on the platform of change in the virus behavior in terms of the new variants. So, but the preparations to look after high surges have been there with us all the time. There have been engagement with the states over and over again. And remember, the hotbeds prior to this nationwide upsurge have been in states where it has been an intense fight for some period of time, like Maharashtra, like Kerala. If you go back where the real intensification was around February, and from there it spreads. We made efforts to engage with the states to forewarn that these peaks are coming, and we are working together.
Yes.
Yes, but the speed is phenomenal.
So, sir, you're saying, sir, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to intervene, sir. You're saying that, but as of March 27th, we had exported more vaccines than we had administered. 62 million versus 53 million. We were busy exporting vaccines. We had not placed firm orders for vaccines, which we should have 6 months ago. We had not empowered the states, perhaps, to go and directly deal with private producers. Now you've suddenly reviewed it. I come back to it. Was the government caught napping, sir?
Let me respond to this, Rajdeep. You see, the export of vaccines is not just one block of issue. There are commitments that the company had made, because of which they got the licensure. So they had agreement with the parent company, particularly this is specific to Covishield, because of which they had committed on exporting to other nations. And that had to be respected by the company, because this was the arrangement based on which the vaccine rights were transferred here. Then there was a commitment made by the company.
Why did you not ramp up manufacturing? So why did you not incentivize private producers in December, January this year? Where were the firm orders placed? The fact is that we are a country, the world's largest manufacturer, is now talking of importing vaccines. Were we caught off guard?
No. Listen to me fully. There was a commitment made by the companies for the global facility where the vaccine is given to poor nations, and that commitment was made by the company. The vaccine which was given to friendly nations is also part of our national interest keeping, and therefore it cannot be just swept aside by one notion, as if there
Okay.
was an exodus of vaccine. No, the entire remaining supplies are with us, and they are
Okay.
being mounted, they are being increased to the best possible extent. And I assure you that these companies, we had repeatedly been in dialogue with them. Money and resources were not an issue. It is just that,
Sir,
remember, vaccines came into picture only in January. Only then we knew that these vaccines are working, and they need to have that comfort before they would ramp up and
I'll
invest their resources more than that. So it is a slow walk. Otherwise, why would you not have Pfizer
okay.
multiplied into 20 by now? It doesn't happen like that.
Okay, I'll come back to you, sir, in a moment, but I want to come to you, Dr. Guleria, because look at what is happening. Today, the Delhi government says several hospitals in the national capital are running short of oxygen. Mumbai makes the same complaint. We've got a shortage in some places, or certainly hoarding and black marketing taking place of medication, crucial drugs, including remdesivir. I want to understand from you then, Dr. Guleria, is really, as the Prime Minister is saying today, the medical infrastructure fully equipped for COVID 2.0, or are we still behind the curve, Dr. Guleria? Are we still struggling when it comes to oxygen, when it comes to critical drugs, for example, sir? Or when it comes to beds, we're not even having enough beds, sir.
I think we need to look at it in a proper manner. We have enough capacity if it is used optimally and used properly. That, I think, is the bottom line. What is happening is that there are people who really don't need oxygen but are hoarding oxygen or taking oxygen either at home or in nursing homes when that is not required. There are people who don't need to take remdesivir, and they're taking remdesivir even when they have mild illness or there is no indication and it is being taken at home. And that the same thing is going on as far as admission is concerned. In many hospitals, people who can stay at home just because of the panic that has been created are insisting on going on hospital. So let me just take this one by one. As far as oxygen is concerned, even if your oxygen saturation is between
Yes.
90 to 94, it's above 90, it's quite all right. And it doesn't matter that you have to bring your oxygen saturation to 98, 99. If you're in a hospital setting and your oxygen by a flow meter is maintained at 92, 93, that is good enough, because what we know from physiology is that what we call the oxygen dissociation curve flattens out after your saturation becomes 90, 92. And it's really of not much benefit if you really try and improve your saturation from 92 to 99. It's a wastage of oxygen, if I may put it that way. So has to be a judicious use of oxygen, and it has to be used in a way that it is properly used. Same goes for remdesivir. Remdesivir is a drug which has not been shown to have any mortality benefit. Just decreases hospital stay by a few days. It's been found to be useful only when it is given in people with moderate to severe illness. If they are in hospital, there's a fall in oxygen saturation that infiltrates in the lung and they are deteriorating. But there are many people who are now taking remdesivir at home. I know some people who have stocked remdesivir in their house. They've kept 20 vials in their house that someone may need this. Now, if everyone starts doing that, we will create a shortage which does not actually exist. Same is going for as far as hospitalization is concerned. 85% of people who have COVID-19 can stay at home. They don't need any treatment. They just need supportive treatment in the form of paracetamol, good hydration, and just monitoring themselves. If we were to do that, there would not be a shortage of hospitals, there would not be a shortage of oxygen, there would not be a shortage of drugs. Unfortunately, because of the infodemic, we have such a panic situation that everyone is thinking that I should hoard oxygen, I should hoard remdesivir, I should hoard steroids, and I should book a bed for myself even if I have no symptom today.
Sir, is that partly at least suggestive of the lack of communication, that people have panicked so easily in this second wave? Is it because of a lack of communication, or is it, as in the case of oxygen, we are told there's enough supply? The problem is there are not enough cylinders, there are not tankers. Now the government is moving oxygen expresses to states. So is the problem with the citizens, as you are seemingly suggesting, or is the problem with the health infrastructure, sir? Who is to blame? The citizens have panicked, or the state has not done enough?
So I think we need to look at it holistically. First issue is that we have to really be able to reach out to the citizens and really educate them and really get this panic and this fear that is being created among society to a very low level. They must understand that in majority of people, COVID can be just like a common flu, and you just need to take your symptomatic medicine and it will become all right. It is, after all, that's how the other strains of coronaviruses are circulating in the world. They just called a flu-like syndrome. But in a small percentage who are more sick, just around 15% or so, we should concentrate on them. The whole thing has got skewed because of the, let's say, misinformation or the infodemic. But at the same time, we need to work in not only checking that, but making sure that there is a good supply chain maintained as far as oxygenation or drugs is concerned.
Sir, I'm going to come to you for treatment in a moment, Dr. Guleria, as you're saying remdesivir should not be used in home treatment, for example. But I want to ask you, Dr. Paul, doesn't all of this suggest that there has been a lack of communication? Today, the Prime Minister is saying COVID appropriate behavior, stay at home, don't go out. But look at what our politicians have been doing for the last couple of months. They've been going on election rally after election rally, no social distancing, no masking. Let's be clear. The lead was not set by our netas. It resulted in complacency, and that's why we've suffered today. It's easy now to blame the citizens, and of course citizens are also responsible. But please tell me, where was the communication for the last 2 months that suggested that COVID 2.0 was on the anvil? Did we not read the signals in late February, early March? We were celebrating. We were having an election utsav. We were having the Kumbh Mela. We could have stepped back then. Your task force could have sent out stronger messaging that do gaz ki duri must remain. We have not won this battle against COVID, sir.
I did remember these events that you're talking about. There are SOPs that should have been followed. And there is no doubt that the adherence to SOPs was the responsibility. Having said that, please look at the press conferences that we have done every week, and the stable message was pleading with folded hands to people that the virus has not gone anywhere. The virus comes back. Even when you have the vaccine, be careful. And we would plead and plead and plead that please don't create crowds, please wear mask, please maintain दूरी. अभी वायरस कहीं गया नहीं है. मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूं कि उसके बावजूद एक जो कंप्लेसेंस आया है,
Sir, I'm sorry to say.
That's a national phenomenon. You know, people thought that the whole problem is over and they can take liberties. This is a tragedy, and now we are paying the wages for that. So there is an issue here that the embracing the appropriate behavior did not go well, and this is true. But the government had not let the guard low in appealing to people, reaching out to people, and so also the state governments in their own way.
Sir, how can you say that? Sir, I'm sorry, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul, government has to walk the talk. Government has to walk the talk, sir. Did the government walk the talk? Did the government maintain do gaz ki duri? My point is, I'm sorry to say this, but people thought that COVID was over. In February, March, people thought COVID was over.
And state after state were imposing fines on defaulters who were not wearing a mask, and people would still defy it. There was so much of arrogance on the part of people because we thought it's all over. So please appreciate that this level of non-conformance to a behavior or a set of behaviors that was so critical for us to maintain ourselves safe and keep the virus away went away. We are all responsible for that. But having said that, the point remains that now we have to come together. Okay. We have all the tools at our disposal, and systematic approach to eliminate this virus and to stop the chains of transmission has to happen, Rajdeep. I want you to come back on that focus. That chains of transmission have to be broken by people.
Let's come back to that. So let's come back to what lies ahead. Yes, sir, I come back to it. Let's come back to the focus on what lies ahead. Dr. Guleria, you said remdesivir is not a magic bullet. It should not be used for home treatment. But we are also finding that many hospitals, doctors, I see prescriptions giving remdesivir. And also I am finding that every hospital is prescribing FabiFlu, some of it which is being sold in a premium in the black market. You tell us now, what is the ideal treatment in terms of an antivirus drug that people should be taking? Because different doctors are giving very different prescriptions, sir.
That's true. And I'd like to really just say that we don't really have an effective antiviral drug as far as COVID 19 is concerned. We've made great progress in developing a vaccine for COVID 19, but unfortunately, we have not really made great progress for developing a good antiviral drug which can kill the virus. We started off 1 year ago with looking at drugs like which were for HIV, lopinavir, retinovir. We looked at hydroxychloroquine. There was a lot of interest in other drugs like ivermectin. We had favipiravir, and then we had remdesivir. The data for any of these drugs is not strong enough to say that it is effective as far as COVID 19 is concerned. And therefore, what I would say is that in the first few days of illness, you just need symptomatic treatment, and 85% or more of people will just respond and become all right. If your saturation starts falling, or you have breathlessness, or your fever starts becoming even more severe, then there is a need to get yourself evaluated. And in moderate to severe illness, where you have patches on the X-ray, you're having fever, your blood reports are showing more inflammation, there is a need for giving remdesivir. There is no need for Tamiflu, which is oseltamivir, which is a drug which was used basically for influenza. It is not a drug which has shown any benefit as far as coronavirus is concerned. It is a drug for another virus. So it is not being shown to be effective. The other drugs which people have tried, and there are a large number of cocktails which are used, which include ivermectin, doxycycline, and others, have not been shown in robust clinical trials to be effective. They are used because of the fact that we honestly don't have a good antiviral drug.
Are you saying, doctor, that therefore you have to take a dynamic call, because some people prescribe plasma therapy, as I said, others are prescribing antiviral drugs? Are you telling me today that we do not know what is the ideal treatment? What you are saying is only if your oxygen falls below a certain level should you be in a situation where you should consult your doctor. I'm just trying to understand to how do we end this confusion, sir, and ensure clear communication? Because otherwise, everyone wants an ICU bed, everyone wants oxygen beds. What would you suggest, sir?
So let me explain this. If you look at the natural history of the disease, majority of people will become all right and the saturation will continue to be good. They may have fever which may last for 5 to 7 days, and they will just need symptomatic treatment. What we mean by symptomatic treatment is paracetamol for fever and symptomatic treatment for cough, cold, and the usual home remedies. Only 15% of people may have other symptoms, which include a fall in your oxygen saturation, that it is going below 94%, your fever is becoming high grade, you're becoming breathless, or you have certain other warning signs that you're drowsy, you're not responding, or you have chest pain and you're not able to breathe properly. If along with that, your saturation is falling, then you need to consult your doctor and you may need to be admitted. Remember, this is a small percentage, less than 15%. In these a small percentage of people, you may need to give remdesivir, and this becomes what we call stage 2. So most people are usually in stage 1 and they will recover. Some will go on to stage or 2, where you will have fall in oxygen saturation. And there are 3 drugs or 3 or 4 drugs that are classical standard of treatment, that is steroids, remdesivir, plasma, and anticoagulants. So majority of patients will recover. Less than 5% may go on to what we call cytokine storm, and then you may need drugs like tocilizumab or high-dose steroids to take care of the cytokine storm which occurs later on. So there is a definite treatment pattern, but it is not only the drugs, it's the timing of the drugs that is very important as far as treatment of COVID-19 is concerned. For example, if you give steroids early, before you have fallen saturation, it may actually be more harmful. The recovery trial showed a harmful effect of steroids if it was given early rather than late. There was a higher mortality. And that's because in the early stage, steroids may actually promote the viremia. Therefore, it's the timing of the drug which is important, and same is true for remdesivir. You can't give steroids, remdesivir as a cocktail on day 1 and say that something will work. That will never happen, and you may cause more harm than good.
Okay, let me come though to what someone has just WhatsApped me. Please be clear, this is not just a scientific color to the crisis, it's a man-made crisis. Today, Dr. Paul, the Prime Minister seemed to suggest states have to get their act together, states have to ensure that there is no migration, we don't want a lockdown. However, many will turn around and say, what about the centre's role? You are now saying as the Prime Minister said, vaccinations for all after May 1st. Do we have enough vaccines? There's a vaccine shortage in some parts of the country. How are we going to by May 1st be in a position to provide vaccines for all? Let's get real, sir. Is this a man-made crisis? And how will you meet the demand for vaccines for all above 18 from 1st of May when you don't have enough vaccines at the moment and not enough vaccine orders are in place? Let's be very honest again.
I give on both the point. Firstly, this war has to be won by state and the center together. The action happened at the district level, happened at the state level, and happened at the national level. This is not or situation; it is an and situation. And therefore, for the Prime Minister to call upon the nation and all the state governments is in fitness of things. That's how this battle is to be won, and we won it last time. And we are together in this battle. It's a whole
How are
of
you
nation.
going to meet the vaccine shortage, sir? How are we going to have enough vaccines for all Indians above the age of 18? Where are these vaccines miraculously coming from? Why not accept that we made mistakes?
Rajdeep, on the vaccine, you are aware that the quantity of vaccine is
Yes, sir.
finite. The world does not have 2 billion doses or 6 billion doses. We have to judiciously use this vaccine to protect our citizens. And that is the way forward. And progressively, the vaccine access has been enhanced, the circle of beneficiaries has been enhanced, and the best possible supplies that are available with us, the maximum possible supplies that are available with us will be used to provide this cover of vaccination in addition to other 5 tools to fight this pandemic. That's the way forward.
Sir, I ask you again, you had told me that we would be in a position earlier, you had told me a few months ago to vaccinate 30 crore Indians double dose by August. Can we really do it at present pace? Do we have enough vaccines? And now that you've added 18 plus, are we in a position to do it, sir? You see, unless you vaccinate, then you are going to be pushed into one wave after the other. The Prime Minister says no lockdown, but what happens if, say, 20 days from now, the cases continue to mount, Dr. Paul, and we don't have enough vaccinations in place?
Firstly, Rajdeep, remember, we have actually more vaccine availability than what I had mentioned and speculated, say, 3-4 months ago. There is a clear escalation in our capacity, and be rest assured on that. And also, there is an opportunity of vaccines such as the Sputnik vaccine to come into our country. So we are witnessing a higher than expected, from that point onwards, vaccine availability. But please remember, the vaccine has to be used for the most needy person above all, and those individuals are those who are above a certain age, and that remains a priority for the program. The other add-ons have been given because there is a hope that there will be availability from other additional vaccines being made available. But the fact remains that the vaccine is just one tool. And please remember, the battle for pandemic is to be fought with all the 5 tools. Just vaccination alone is not sufficient. Containment is important, testing is important, ramping up of clinical facilities is important, and containment zones are important. I think depending solely and having a narrative only around vaccine is not right at all, Rajdeep. That's not the way any nation has fought this battle. Please understand that. It's in the US also. It is only now that they are looking at adult vaccination in general. They were also focusing on certain categories as we did. So please remember, vaccination is only one strategy. Europe is fighting the war. Vaccine is just one part. Right. They have covered very little of their population. So I think an overhype being created by media on vaccination dependence for pandemic fight is also not right, Rajdeep.
Sir, but in the absence, sir, I'm sorry to say, but but in the absence of, if our vaccinations don't keep up the pace that we had hoped, then aren't we much more susceptible to every wave that comes? That's the point I'm making. Until now, we were told by policymakers that the faster we vaccinate, the better our chances of combating any further waves. Now you're telling me it's only one tool. I accept that it's not a magic bullet, but we have concerns over the pricing of vaccines, over whether we have enough capacity, whether we are going to import mRNA vaccines. There's no clarity on any of these issues. So when the Prime Minister today says we'll vaccinate all from May 1st, all very well, but where is the clarity? Will a richer state like Maharashtra procure vaccines and a poorer state like Manipur lose out? All these questions, sir, need to be answered. Where is the transparency, sir, with due regard on our vaccine policy? You've suddenly gone in for a new policy after the pressure of numbers, and we don't have transparency yet, sir.
You see, the announcement for the policy change happened only 24 hours ago. You will get these, these notifications in due course very, very soon. So the clarity would come, because only with clarity can all this be implemented. So just wait for a while. But I want to come back to the fact that nobody has said, and nobody in his senses can say, that the whole war against the pandemic can be won only with vaccination. You can have vaccine and you can still fall sick. No vaccine is 100% safe. So therefore, to overhype this notion of vaccine and is not fair to the media, I think. And also remember, vaccines are always going to be funded for a long period of time, and therefore they have to be used judiciously. And we are lucky that we have such a big stockpile of vaccines. Didn't the Prime Minister say that we are fastest having covered such a large population? Remember, we are still lucky that we have such a large stockpile.
Sir, I'm going by the...
Do not undermine that.
Okay, so I'm not undermining that, sir, but I want to ask you also now, Dr. Guleria, health infrastructure. When today people are running around for a bed in Delhi, when there is a shortage of oxygen in several parts of the country, is our health, you said that citizens have panicked, yes, point taken. But is our health infrastructure in the last 1 year, have we invested enough? I am told out of the oxygen plants that were sanctioned last year, only 1/3 of them are actually functioning at the moment. So let's be very clear. Have we used this last 1 year really to build up enough capacity to be able to take this COVID 2.0, Dr. Guleria? An honest answer. Did we somewhere, even within the medical infrastructure community, lower our guard at some stage in the last few months?
No, I don't think we lowered our guard. I think we have to understand 2 or 3 things. One is that when we look at managing the pandemic, we did a lot of work in the last 1 year, whether it be oxygen plants, whether it be COVID care centers, COVID hospital, COVID ICUs. Many district area centers were converted and a whole management protocol was made. But then there is also acceptance of the fact that when the cases came down, there was a huge pressure for non-COVID care, which had been suffering for more than 1 year. So there was some diversion of things for non-COVID care. Remember, for 1 year, there had been no non-COVID care happening. There were people who had been suffering and had other diseases, whether it be tuberculosis, whether it be the immunization program, or whether it be a lot of other things. There was a need to bring that back on track. And because of that, there was also a little bit of shift from the focus purely on COVID to some degree of non-COVID care. And when we had this surge, that is now being brought back again to total COVID care. And that is the transition that is happening, which is taking place in some states. But when we talk of the health infrastructure of the country, we have to look at it not only from a pandemic point of view. We can't say that we will start managing all our COVID patients and we will do nothing as far as trauma is concerned. We will not manage the head injury patients. We still are having a large number of patients of trauma coming in. So we have to balance non-COVID and COVID, and that is where the strain is happening. Because when we had the lockdown and when we had a lot of such things, a lot of these things had actually almost come to a halt. OPDs are running, patients coming to the OPD, we have routine surgeries being done. Gradually, all of that has to be again tapered down or de-escalated, and that is going to take some time. But I think we can quickly come back to where we were a few months ago in terms of the infrastructure.
So I want to ask you though one question which is critical. Just listening to what the Prime Minister said on lockdowns, and I want both of you then to respond to that, because there is a concern among many people, Mumbai likely to go in for a lockdown tomorrow and maybe other parts also. Listening to what the Prime Minister said, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Guleria and Dr. Paul. Just listen in.
साथियों, आज की स्थिति में हमें देश को लॉकडाउन से बचाना है। मैं राज्यों से भी अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो लॉकडाउन को अंतिम विकल्प के रूप में ही इस्तेमाल करें। लॉकडाउन से बचने की भरपूर कोशिश करनी है और माइक्रो कंटेनमेंट जोन पर ही ध्यान केंद्रित करना है।
Sir, you heard the Prime Minister there. I want to ask both of you clearly. Dr. Paul, you first. Inevitably, are we heading towards another lockdown? Britain and other countries, some parts of Europe going in for have gone in for second lockdowns also in the past. Is India heading for another lockdown, sir, given what we are seeing at the moment? Are you confident? Can you tell our viewers clearly we will not go in for another national lockdown?
Rajdip, if we put our act together even today, a full-scale lockdown can be avoided, should be avoided. Certainly, it can be avoided in most geographies if we put our act together. The tools of control that I mentioned, coupled with judicious use of restrictions, containment zones, and discipline on the part of all of us, can save us the need for a hammer approach of the level of a lockdown. But it has to be a concerted effort, and there has to be a full-blown effort to stop the chains of transmission. Crowds cannot be there. Masks have to be worn. We have to accept some level of discipline.
Sir,
And
I wish all
Right.
of this had been said before the elections and the Kumbh Mela, sir. I wish all of this had been said a month ago before the Kumbh Mela and the election. But Dr. Guleria, are we heading for a lockdown? Is a lockdown inevitable?
The government has always stated these.
Dr.
these
Guleria,
principles.
is a lockdown inevitable?
So in my opinion, we are not looking at a national level lockdown. What we're looking at is containment zones. What we need to look at is areas where there is a high case positivity. Develop that into containment zone. Make sure that from there the infection doesn't travel out. Do a lot of testing, tracking, treatment, isolation in those areas. Make sure that the people don't go out from that area, because this is a human-to-human spread. So if we are able to do that, make containment zones, make sure that we are able to contain the infection in that area, not allow it to spread to other areas. At the same time, go back to our philosophy which we had of having maybe red, yellow, green zones or whatever we want to do. We would, and force COVID appropriate behavior, make sure that crowds are not there. We can get away from this pandemic. Remember, good non-pharmacological measures will go a long way. It's not drugs, it's not the hospital which will help us to control the pandemic. It's how people will behave and how we will interact with each other. And if all of us as citizens come together with COVID appropriate behavior, avoiding crowds, and really cooperating in terms of not allowing the infection to spread, will not have a lockdown.
I will ask you, sir, one last time, Dr. Paul. To some extent, is this a man-made crisis? I know it's tough to combat the virus. This is not an easy task that you and others have. But to some extent, missteps, export of oxygen, perhaps the vaccine policy needed to be reviewed. Perhaps we let our guard down. Perhaps, as I said, our politicians didn't set the right example. Yes, citizens also failed. Do you believe, in conclusion, COVID 2.0 is not just about the virus, it's also about our failings? We could have augmented production, we could have done much more. Do you believe it's man-made, or will you even now say at the end of the day, it's the virus which is responsible, not the humans, not the government?
Well, virus is totally responsible, Rajdip.
Whether state or center.
We did let our guard go low in the face of a virus that was still lurking, and we have to face this now, because we as a society, as people, we let this virus prosper, so to say. But let us clearly assure you that the preparation, the level of preparation, and the experience that has been gathered for the last 1 year is handy, and that is reflected in continuing low mortality rates that you see even today. And I think there is a very clear, resolute way
Sir,
forward.
I take the point, sir, but it is 94 days since the vaccination drive started, and only about 1% of the population has got 2 doses. That's my worry. We're going to have to accelerate the process. I hope that we are ready for that. I hope we can do what in Israel does, administer 119 doses for every 100 population. We are hovering at around 9 doses per 100 population. I understand that both of you have a huge challenge. Both of you are professionals. I respect that, and I hope that we can all come together, as the Prime Minister said, to fight the pandemic. But clearly, it's the government that has to set the lead. Thank you both,
Rajdip,
Dr. Paul, Dr. Guleria, for joining me on a day when the Prime Minister... Yes,
Rajdeep, it
Yes,
is
sir.
not fair.
You wanted to
This
say
is
something.
That you want to compare a small nation with a large nation of our size. That nation is smaller than a few metropolitan cities. There are certain things that can be done in that kind of a situation. But you should look at how this nation has mounted a massive creation of vaccines of the number that are huge and largest perhaps in barring maybe one or two,
Yes.
two countries. And that also we will catch up, we assure you. And with the speed
Right.
that it has come. But to overemphasize and over-expect an explosion of vaccines for such a large nation is not fair. I urge you not to amplify this narrative. Vaccination is only one tool. And ultimately, I urge it is the people's participation and the people's behavior which is the most important social and the correct vaccine, in addition to other 6 tools that I keep mentioning.
Thank you both very much, though you have come and spoken. I know it's a tough day. You've had long days, and I appreciate it. I don't think we as viewers, as Indians, appreciate the hard work that's going on by several of you. Y'all are also in your own ways, sir, working very, very hard. But it's my job as journalists to ask the tough questions and to ask the questions people want answers to hold you accountable. Dr. Paul, thank you very much. Dr. Guleria, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you both very much. Let's turn to tonight's good news story, the person of the day. And the person of the day is a man called Mayur Shelke. I want to tell you his story, a Central Railways official who risked his life to save a child from a station near Mumbai over the weekend. This is a remarkable story of true courage. Take a look.
A kid walking with a visually impaired mother along the railway platform. Then horror of horrors. The child suddenly slips onto the track even as a speeding train hurtles towards him. Then out of nowhere, a hero without cape emerges as a super savior. The man is seen sprinting towards the kid, who lies on the track awaiting a certain death. And then comes the breathtaking rescue. The savior manages to pull the child and himself from the approaching wheels of the train, jumping in the nick of time to the safety of the platform. The hero is pointsman with the Mumbai division of Central Railways, Mayur Shelke, who risked his life to save the child from being run over by train at Vangani railway station in Mumbai.
वो बच्चा जो है अपने ब्लाइंड माँ के साथ प्लेटफॉर्म से गुजर रहा था, तो वो बच्चा किनारे पे आ गिरा और नीचे फिसल गया। वो सब मैं अपने आंखों से सामने देखा। फिर मैंने सोचा कि वो बच्चे की जान बचाने के लिए अपने को थोड़ा बहुत प्रयास करना जरूरी है। और उसी दौरान वो प्लेटफॉर्म से ट्रेन भी आ रही थी और मैं उस वो काम में सफल हो गया।
The heroic effort of Shelke won him accolades from several quarters. Railway Minister Piyush Goyal dialed Shelke and hailed him for his exceptional courage. He was also felicitated by the railway authorities of the Mumbai division of Central Railways.
मेरे को पर्सनल कॉल किया था उन्होंने, पीयूष गोयल सर माननीय, तो उन्होंने भी कॉल किया था। उन्होंने बहुत बहुत बधाई दी और मेरे को बहुत सारा कि ऐसे ही काम करते हो, रेलवे के कॉलर ऊपर की, फिर बहुत सारा उन्होंने धन्यवाद भी दिया मेरे को।
Coming to the rescue of the child like a Devdoot, Shelke's selfless act has made him Mumbai's real-life hero. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, that remarkable story of Mayur Shelke. I want to end with an image of the day. As in the discussion, I asked why Israel was vaccinating so much faster than India. Dr. Paul said much smaller country, and he's got a point. But here is the news from Israel, because Israel has now removed protective masks as the country has vaccinated a majority of its population. Citizens across the country removed their masks. In a way, Israel, some would say, is entering a post-COVID world. Fingers crossed. When will India do the same? Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe, adopt COVID appropriate behavior. Thanks for watching. Bye for now, my friends.